You know what I've been thinking about lately? It's in the title!
I meant to get your phone!
Power fantasies. Love them or hate them, they are everywhere. But what makes a good power fantasy? Simply put, progression. Progression makes a good power fantasy. Things need to be moving and they need to keep moving, and things need to have a degree of uncertainty to them. Power fantasies have three pillars per se. Knowledge.
But you know what I like a lot more than materialistic things?
Knowledge. Power and resources. A good power fantasy starts by giving the main character one or two of these traits in spades, and the story is generally about acquiring the remaining trait. For example, Overlord. Overlord is a popular power fantasy anime where the main character ends up in the video game world of Yggdrasil, in the body of his character in said game. Overlord starts off with the protagonist having power and resources, and the story follows him gaining knowledge of the outside world while further expanding his resources. As he learns more about the world, so do we, and it motivates us as viewers to want to watch the protagonist absolutely wreck shop, because in the process of doing so, we are also progressing our own knowledge of the world and its lore. Generally, power fantasies fail when the protagonist has all three and the story continues. As soon as the trifecta is complete, then the story loses all forward momentum and effectively ends, or at least it should. A Returner's Magic Should Be Special is a great example of this. The story follows Desir, one of 6 brave heroes who failed to rescue the world from its impending doom. Desir is suddenly shot back in time and gets a chance to accomplish what he couldn't before. It's got a decent hook, but as the story goes forward, it slowly devolves until it just becomes Desir just predicting the future over and over again, much like Aizen towards the end of Bleach.
We're simply a part of my plan.
Desir has decades of knowledge and is able to quickly acquire enough power to become unmatched. Put him in a school where he has virtually unlimited access to resources, and you get a boring story. So before answering the first question, let's really ask ourselves, what makes a bad power fantasy? Let's start with each of the 3 pillars. First, knowledge. Having a power fantasy through knowledge falls largely into one of 2 categories: knowledge of the future or hyper-detailed knowledge of something specific. A Returner's Magic Should Be Special is a good example of the first category, knowledge of the future. The story ends up just going exactly as Desir predicts at every turn and makes everything seem pointless. Assassination and revenge stories tend to be the latter category, i.e. someone dedicates their life to finding and getting revenge on them, arming themselves with knowledge of their foe along the way. Both of these show us that the future should be mutable. The future is not a stagnant thing, especially when someone with preemptive knowledge is meddling. In both instances, the key to making them compelling is to have things change. The decision of someone who traveled to the past should have significant rippling effects on the future course of events. An assassination quest should have unexpected variables or scenarios pop up. It's no fun if everything goes according to plan. There needs to be a degree of unexpectedness, mystery, or some other compelling factor to keep the momentum going. Next is power.
Vegeta, what does the scouter say about his power level? It's over 9,000!
Power needs to progress in a satisfying way, regardless of if the main character is actually getting stronger or not. In the case of shonens like DBZ, power scaling is the biggest issue, and power progresses so rapidly that it renders the previous Super Saiyan whatever form virtually null and void. Power needs proper scaling. In the case of shows like The Eminence in Shadow, where the main character is already strong, the progression is shown through cooler and more flashy moves. In this case, the main character needs proper justification for holding back most of the time. Usually, it's because of collateral damage or because the main character is in some sort of disguise. In the case of Eminence and Shadow, it's both. The last pillar is resources.
この金でどうだ?
Resources, including people, wealth, connections, etc., need a clear limit. You can only go so far by saying, I have a guy for that, or I have an item for that. There's a reason that rich people are weird and apathetic. Past a certain point of wealth, shit just starts not to matter. There needs to be a limit on how far these resources can take you alone. There cannot be an item for everything, and you certainly can't have a guy for everything. Otherwise, you'll just end up in the Harry Potter effect of all spells being pointless, and some just really stupid spells being there just cuz. So here are 3 good power fantasies I would recommend, one for each pillar.
Knowledge.
Chronicles of the Demonic Faction follows the reincarnation of the Assassin King, Chun Hajin. The Assassin King in his life was one of the top 10 martial masters. In pursuit of his freedom from his life as an assassin, he was cornered by his former allies and mercilessly ripped apart. However, he soon wakes in the body of the 3rd young lord of the heavenly demonic cult. The flow of this story goes from knowledge to power to resources. The main character uses his decades of knowledge and experience in order to regain his martial prowess and power, so that eventually he can take over the heavenly demonic cult. Resources. The next pillar is power. The star-embracing swordmaster is an example of the main character starting out with power. Vlad is an orphan that works for a local tavern and inn in the town of Sawara. He can hold his own in a fight and won't back down from one if it comes to it. He's good, a little too good in fact. The secret to his strength is a voice that whispers to him whenever he swings a sword or something similar. As he listens to the voice, while he practices, he feels his form growing sharper and stronger at an abnormally fast rate. All is going well until he's given a task to escort a knight into Sawara. A knight named Sir Stanga. When he arrives back at Sawara, he finds that the 2 conflicting mercenary organizations fought, and who he brought was not Sir Stanga. His name is Godin, and he is here to finish off the stragglers. The fight is intense but brief. With his aura, Godin slaughters everyone in the inn. Everyone except Vlad. As Godin walks away, Vlad swears his revenge. Here, the flow is power, resources, then knowledge. Vlad, who has power that will steadily grow already, seeks to acquire more. He seeks out resources by becoming a knight under a noble family until he can track down and gain knowledge of swordsmanship and of Godin and his whereabouts. Lastly, resources. Nebula's civilization has such an interesting premise and hook to boot. The Lost World is a civilization building game where the player acts as a god and slowly expands their influence by getting various sentient species across the planet to worship them. 32 players are summoned to a strange and desolate ruin where they can decide whether or not they wish to participate. Should they choose to forfeit, they lose all memories of this place and return to their daily lives. Should they choose to continue onward, they will all compete to conquer the Lost World and become the one true god of it all. However, should they perish during this challenge, they will face true death as a god. They each select a population of species such as lizardmen, orcs, humans, etc., and seek to spread their godly name across the land of Lost World. Here, the flow is resources, knowledge, then power. The protagonist has access to a set population of lizardmen and is tasked with growing them by gaining knowledge of their surroundings and players. Using this knowledge and the resources at their disposal, the protagonist grows the power of his civilization until he becomes the one true god of the Lost World. Power fantasies. Love them or hate them, they're everywhere. Thanks for watching.
Mr. Huang, you're impressive. But I'm afraid I've got some bad news for you.
This is gonna come from.
You see, I've been leveling up this whole time.
What just happened?